Hey everyone, this is Dr. Weird 28 here. In today's video, I wanted to go over the concept of movement in Tarkov. A lot of times when people are just getting into this game in particular, but any shooter, movement is an issue that people are unaware of. One of the obvious aspects in any shooter is don't stand still if you're possible, especially if you're in the wide open. And the reason why is if you are standing still, you are a much easy target. And in something like Tarkov, people will be and likely are watching you regularly. So if you were stand still somewhere out in the open or somewhere where you're pretty visible, it is far more likely for you to get picked off. Now, where this becomes tricky is if you are trying to hit a shot yourself, or potentially if you're trying to loot something or accomplish a task. Inevitably, there's a moment where you are standing still. Those can be unavoidable, or you can choose to modify exactly what you're doing in that sort of moment. For example, let's say you were trying to unlock a door. You can try and do a little crouch and stand up and down while you are unlocking it, just to try and make a headshot a little bit harder. Even when you are around kind of trying to snipe a little bit, if you are able to move a little bit, you are going to decrease the likelihood that you are one-tapped. Now here you can see that in this video I am standing relatively still. However, at this point in the raid, I feel like I'm in a position where it is very unlikely that someone would be able to get eyes on exactly where I am. If it was later in the raid, this spot, I'd probably be a little bit more careful about it, but you have to take all factors into consideration. The next aspect of movement that I want to talk about in Tarkov is just general movement throughout a map. And it can vary a little bit based on what map you're on. And I say that because player scavs are something that it varies depending on what map you're on as to how quickly they come in. And they have typically a completely different pace to the game or to the raid than a PMC. When a PMC spawns into a raid, they typically play the map based on how their spawn is. So we're looking at Lighthouse here. We spawned up north on the map, and so we pushed towards the rogue camp relatively quickly. And we were trying to get up here to fight the rogues and potentially loot and get out. A player scav, they have nothing to lose, and so they will, with reckless abandon, try and push where they think players may be, or potentially rogues that are killed on this map, and trying to go loot them. Now, on different maps where player scavs spawn in a little bit later, you might play the game, the raid, a little bit differently, but in general, you're going to adjust your style of play, typically based on where you are on the map. Now, if you are specifically trying to do something like sniping or PvP, you may push a different way than you otherwise would have. For example, let's say we loaded in that same spot, but we were just looking for players. We might literally just hang up on the rocks there, looking down towards rogue camp, waiting for other players or player scavs to try and loot there. In that case, you're kind of waiting for the players to come towards you, and you might sort of surround the commonly taken path or common targets, almost using it as bait. I know when we play, typically if we get to an area that we expect looted or where enemies should already have been killed based on where our spawn is, we start wondering, like, okay, you know, these rogues are still up, or these scavs are still up. It's possible someone is trying to snipe or keep eyes on this from another angle. Now, if you are trying to move through an area of the map gathering loot or killing bosses or whatever, you have to keep in mind that there are also people coming and trying to basically follow your path to get to where you are now, where the loot is now. And the longer you stay where you are, the more likely you are going to be attacked or have to engage in battle, and that's fine. It just might change how you play the map. So in this specific raid here, we pushed forward. I had a bag full of loot myself. Not yet, as you can see. I get into north a little bit later in this raid and start looting it. However, my two teammates get hung up here in the eastern building, hearing noises off to the right. Now, part of the issue is the sound is really broken in Tarkov right now. So they were hearing what sounded like out to the west of this building, when in reality, they were just hearing me inside of north. But they did end up hearing stuff in the east side of the building outside as well, which they kind of froze, and therefore I kind of froze with them. And because of it, it allowed more and more players to get up into position to basically fight us for the gear that we had and the loot that we had. What we should have done in this is, as soon as we left this building, we should have all left once we saw that it was clear to get out of this building, moved into north. And once we got out of, finished in north, we should have immediately tried to get out towards the train or the car if it was there. The train is probably safer at that point. Given our spawn, we did not have the northern extract, so that was not an option. Otherwise, we would have had to backtrack all the way to the path to shoreline extract. And with that being the case, we are going to run into players that are trying to head north. So the safest bet, in my opinion, would have been go to the train, defend the train as players potentially try to push that way, and players scavs, and extract more safely there, so that players have to push towards us as opposed to we don't have to push towards them unknowingly. So at this point in the raid right here, I am kind of scanning around because my teammates hear something outside, not realizing that they're likely hearing me, in addition to the other players that are out on the east side. So in general, I think the concepts that you want to keep in mind are rarely stand still. I'm standing still right here, just that the only place really that someone's going to be able to see me and shoot me, I'm looking at, so I'd be able to get eyes on them. If you are not going to be sitting still trying to trap players and snipe them potentially, or just engage them in a ratting technique, you want to constantly be moving. So at this point, we should have already left this whole area, but instead we stayed here and kind of backtracked a little bit, and that ends up being what gets you killed. So in general, just kind of keep in mind, it's not just what you're doing at the moment. You have to think what other players likely are doing based on that exact moment. I think that the more you learn the spawns of the map, you'll play it a little bit differently as well. Let me bring up a map here. All right. Oops, let's get out of that. Let's see, Tarkov. All right, so bringing up this lighthouse map. I'm going to go with this one. I like this one. So you can see some of the spawns right here. So this is a spawn. This is a spawn. So immediately if you get this spawn, you got to think there might be this one that's ahead of us. This is where we did spawn. And so this person's likely going to push this way or sometimes down this way. But if you spawn here, you're always going to be kind of looking this direction immediately to see if there is someone there and potentially pick them off. But we took a path down towards this way. And in doing that, we knew that this team was likely going to head down this road through here if they were going to be pushing north. But there's typically a flow heading just straight north on this map. Sometimes you get people heading south, or if they're trying to pick scavs off the road or loot up in the chalets here, changes a little bit. But typically, in general, both players and player scavs are going to head from south to north. Now, other maps like customs, let's see. All right, you have spawns in different places. So, for example, if you get the spawn here by trailer park, you got to know that there could be spawns in any of these other locations, but rarely do you see engagement in this area right off the spawn, but you can get some of these teams to push back this way looking for a spawn like here. Where a map like this, we have spawns all across the map and they kind of converge. Some are heading this way, some are heading this way. It's going to be a little bit different, but the same concept of not hanging out in one area too long is for the best, especially if there's been a big battle. For example, let's say you engage Rashala here at the gas station and you've killed all of them. It took you several minutes to do it, but there were grenades and lots of gunfire going off. Players are going to hear that and they're just going to flock to it. And so if you spend more time there, likely you're going to be third-partied. So I think the lesson is, if you're going to be hanging out in any area specifically, be prepared for that third party so that you can handle it, or at the very least, get moving as soon as you can so that you can disengage more readily if you're desiring that. If you guys have any other specific questions or topics you'd like to see in Escape from Tarkov, feel free to leave a comment, like, and subscribe to the video. Otherwise, till next time, keep it weird.